Hey everyone, and welcome back to Exposed Scandalous Files of the Elite. I am your host, Jim Chapman, and it is Election Day. And I'm bringing you a special Election Day episode of Exposed Scandalous Files of the Elite. And I'm going to call this one, The Scandals of the Presidency. And we're not going to get political today, but y'all know I love my fun facts, and I wanted to bring you some of the scandals that have surrounded not only the presidency, but elections in general, voting in general, and just a lot of other things, and try to stay with the theme of today. So I'm going to give y'all some stats first, and we're going to start with the 10 most notable presidential scandals in U.S. history. And I'm not going to put these in any particular order, but I think you're going to find a lot of these interesting. So we'll start with the Watergate scandal, which was from 1972 to 1974. The scandal involved a break-in at the Democratic National Committee headquarters, and subsequently it was discovered that President Nixon tried to cover it up, and that ultimately led to Nixon's resignation. If you'll remember, he famously said, "I am not a crook." That was a horrible Nixon impersonation, but, I do what I can. And how about the Monica Lewinsky affair? That was from 1995 to 1998. Of course, President Bill Clinton faced impeachment charges related to his extramarital affair with White House intern Monica Lewinsky and his attempts to cover it up. He was eventually acquitted by the Senate. The Iran-Contra affair of the 1980s, and that scandal involved the secret sale of arms to Iran, which was under an arms embargo at the time, to fund Contra rebels in Nicaragua. It raised significant constitutional and ethical questions about presidential power. And I got one that you may have never heard of. It goes all the way back to the 1920s, and it's called the Teapot Dome scandal. This scandal involved the secret leasing of federal oil reserves in Teapot Dome, Wyoming, and Elk Hills, California, by Secretary of the Interior Albert Fall to private oil companies. It was one of the first major scandals in U.S. history. How about the scandals of Warren G. Harding from 1920 to 1923? Harding's presidency was marred by several scandals, including the Teapot Dome scandal I just told you about, and others involving corruption among his cabinet members. How about the Clinton Foundation controversy from 2001, and that continues all the way to the present? Allegations about the influence of foreign donations to the Clinton Foundation during Hillary Clinton's tenure as Secretary of State raised ethical concerns and were a focal point of the 2016 presidential election. And also with Hillary Clinton, them Clintons got a lot of scandals, you know what I'm saying? Hillary Clinton faced scrutiny for using her private email server for official communications during her time as Secretary of State. Of course, that raised a bunch of security concerns and transparency concerns. And then she deleted almost all of the emails. And that created even more controversy. So that was back in 2015, and also a big focal point in the 2016 elections, and continues to be a focal point. The Bay of Pigs invasion of 1961, while not a scandal in the traditional sense, the failed invasion of Cuba was a significant embarrassment for President John F. Kennedy and raised questions about U.S. foreign policy and military strategy. The affair of James Buchanan back in the 1850s. How about that? Although not a scandal in the modern sense, Buchanan's close relationships with certain men raised questions about his sexuality and personal life, which have been debated by historians ever since. In 1868, The last one on this topic, Andrew Johnson's impeachment. Johnson was impeached primarily for violating the Tenure of Office Act by attempting to remove Edwin Stanton, the Secretary of War, from his position. He was acquitted by just one vote in the Senate. So there you have that. And how about voting scandals? Believe it or not, even before the last few years, y'all, there were a lot of voting scandals. And I'll cover kind of a top 10 of that again. No particular order. And we're going to start off way back in 1876. In that presidential election where voter suppression was a topic. The election between Rutherford B. Hayes and Samuel Tilden was marked by widespread voter suppression, intimidation, and disputed results in several states. The controversy was resolved through a compromise that resulted in Hayes becoming the president in exchange for the withdrawal of federal troops from the South. And how about the 1960 presidential election? Allegations of voter fraud in Illinois and Texas, particularly Chicago, where John F. Kennedy won, have been debated for decades. Some claim the organized crime in Chicago influenced the election, although it remains a topic of speculation. The 2000 presidential election between George W. Bush and Al Gore was marred by issues in Florida, including confusing ballots. There was something known as a butterfly ballot. Look it up. Voter disenfranchisement and a Supreme Court decision, Bush versus Gore, that effectively decided that election. It was super close. The 2016 presidential election, allegations of Russian interference, including hacking into the Democratic National Committee's emails and spreading misinformation on social media, raised concerns about the integrity of the electoral process. The 1948 Texas Senate election, Lyndon B. Johnson won the Senate seat in a highly controversial election that involved ballot box stuffing. The phrase vote early, vote often is often associated with this election. The 1930s Chicago elections. Chicago's political machine was notorious for voter fraud, including practices such as dead voters casting ballots and multiple voting by the same individuals. The city's elections during this period were often marred by corruption. The 1982 Illinois gubernatorial election. In this election, allegations of voter fraud emerged, including claims of dead people voting. The election was closely contested, and the allegations raised questions about integrity. The 2012 presidential election, allegations of voter suppression tactics emerged, particularly against minority voters in several states. All right, so I've covered top scandals, from the presidential scandals to voting scandals. Look, the biggest election that you're going to be voting on in the next 4 years, in all likelihood, is today. Y'all may be shocked to know how much it costs to actually run for president. You know, there's a saying in the United States that one of the greatest things about this country is you can grow up in the worst of circumstances and you still have a shot at being president. But one thing I'll say, you better have a lot of support and a lot of money behind you, because I'm going to give you Kamala Harris and Donald Trump and the money they had at their disposal on this election. And I was not only shocked by the amount of money, but also the disparity between these two, which may surprise you. So we'll start with Donald Trump. And Donald Trump has total receipts for this election, money he's taken in from donors and committees and large PACs and things like that, in the amount of $391,949,644.42. And if you think that's a lot of money, well, Kamala Harris has at her disposal, or had at her disposal, total receipts get this, of $997,787.25. Son of a bitch. That's a lot of money. So if you want to run for president, make a lot of rich friends and start saving money. That's all I can tell you. Of course, I got to round this out with some really cool fun facts. And so here they are. The first presidential election took place in 1788 and 1789. George Washington was elected as the first president and, believe it or not, received 100% of the electoral votes. Speaking of the electoral votes, the United States uses the electoral college system to elect its president. Each state has a certain number of votes based on its population, and a total of 538 electoral votes exist. A candidate needs a majority of 270 to win. Incumbent presidents have a significant advantage in elections. Since 1900, only a few incumbents have lost their re-election bids. Those include George H.W. Bush in 1992 and Jimmy Carter in 1980. Voter turnout varies by election. The highest turnout for a presidential election was way back in 1900, with about 73.7% of eligible voters casting ballots. Man, they believed in voting back then. In more recent elections, the turnout has hovered around 55 to 60%. And the first woman to run for president, believe it or not, it was not Hillary Clinton. The first woman to run for president was way back in 1872, a woman by the name of Victoria Woodhull. But she was not allowed to even vote for herself, as women did not gain the right to vote until 1920. That is so bizarre to me. I just cannot imagine a time in history where women were not allowed to vote, but their vote didn't matter. They didn't think women counted back in until 1920. The youngest president ever elected, John F. Kennedy. He was elected at the age of 43. However, Theodore Roosevelt was younger when he assumed the presidency at 42 after the assassination of William McKinley. A little Election Day fact: Election Day is held on the first Tuesday after the first Monday in November. This date was established in 1845 to ensure that Election Day would not fall on November 1st, which is All Saints' Day. Many people may be surprised that write-in candidates sometimes can have success. In 1976, a write-in campaign by a candidate named Rocky Anderson gained attention, although he did not win. But of course, the movie Rocky released around that time. How about candidates that have won the popular vote but lost the election? That's happened 4 times in our nation's history. In 1824, Andrew Jackson actually won the popular vote but received less than 50% of the electoral vote. John Quincy Adams won the presidency. In 1876, Samuel Tilden won the popular vote, but Rutherford B. Hayes received 185 electoral votes to Tilden's 184. In 1888, Grover Cleveland won the popular vote, but received 168 electoral votes to Ben Harris's 233. And more recently, in 2000, Al Gore won the popular vote, but lost the election to George W. Bush. It was one of the most heavily contested elections in modern history. The U.S. Supreme Court stopped the Florida recount of ballots and gave Bush the state's 25 electoral votes, giving him 271 compared to Gore's 255. There are only 3 requirements to be president, according to Article 2, Section 1 of the Constitution. You must be 35 years old. You have to have lived in the United States for at least 14 years. You must be a natural-born citizen. Those are the 3 requirements. 8 presidents have died in office. William Henry Harrison died of pneumonia. Zachary Taylor died of gastro issues. Abraham Lincoln was assassinated. James Garfield was assassinated. William McKinley was assassinated. John F. Kennedy was assassinated. Warren Harding had a heart attack, and Franklin Roosevelt had a cerebral hemorrhage. Lastly, today, the last thing I'm going to give you, on January 20th, 1961, newly elected President John F. Kennedy made what is widely considered the greatest inauguration speech of all time with his presidential inaugural address. And it's really something that, in my opinion, every American should listen to at least once. It's truly amazing. And here it is, that speech from way back in 1961.
You, John Fitzgerald Kennedy, do solemnly swear.
I, John Fitzgerald Kennedy, do solemnly swear.
That you will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States.
That I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States.
And will, to the best of your ability.
And will, to the best of my ability.
Preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States.
Preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States.
So help you God.
So help me God. Vice President Johnson, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chief Justice, President Eisenhower, Vice President Nixon, President Truman, Reverend clergy, fellow citizens. We observe today not a victory of party, but a celebration of freedom, symbolizing an end as well as a beginning, signifying renewal as well as change. For I have sworn before you and Almighty God the same solemn oath our forebears prescribed nearly a century and 3/4 ago. The world is very different now, for man holds in his mortal hands the power to abolish all forms of human poverty and all forms of human life. And yet the same revolutionary beliefs for which our forebears fought are still at issue around the globe. The belief that the rights of man come not from the generosity of the state, but from the hand of God. We dare not forget today that we are the heirs of that first revolution. Let the word go forth from this time and place to friend and foe alike that the torch has been passed to a new generation of Americans born in this century, tempered by war, disciplined by a hard and bitter peace, proud of our ancient heritage, and unwilling to witness or permit the slow undoing of those human rights to which this nation has always been committed and to which we are committed today at home and around the world. Let every nation know, whether it wishes us well or ill, that we shall pay any price, bear any burden, meet any hardship, support any friend, oppose any foe to assure the survival and the success of liberty. This much we pledge and more. To those old allies whose cultural and spiritual origins we share, we pledge the loyalty of faithful friends. United, there is little we cannot do in a host of cooperative ventures. Divided, there is little we can do, for we dare not meet a powerful challenge at odds and split asunder. To those new states whom we welcome to the ranks of the free, we pledge our word that one form of colonial control shall not have passed away merely to be replaced by a far more iron tyranny. We shall not always expect to find them supporting our view, but we shall always hope to find them strongly supporting their own freedom, and to remember that in the past, those who foolishly sought power by riding the back of the tiger ended up inside. To those people in the huts and villages of half the globe struggling to break the bonds of mass misery, we pledge our best efforts to help them help themselves for whatever period is required, not because the communists may be doing it, not because we seek their votes, but because it is right. If a free society cannot help the many who are poor, it cannot save the few who are rich. To our sister republics south of our border, we offer a special pledge to convert our good words into good deeds in a new alliance for progress, to assist free men and free governments in casting off the chains of poverty. But this peaceful revolution of hope cannot become the prey of hostile powers. Let all our neighbors know that we shall join with them to oppose aggression or subversion anywhere in the Americas. And let every other power know that this hemisphere intends to remain the master of its own house. To that World Assembly of Sovereign States, the United Nations, our last best hope, in an age where the instruments of war have far outpaced the instruments of peace, we renew our pledge of support to prevent it from becoming merely a forum for invective, to strengthen its shield of the new and the weak, and to enlarge the area in which its writ may run. Finally, to those nations who would make themselves our adversary, we offer not a pledge, but a request that both sides begin anew the quest for peace. Before the dark powers of destruction, unleashed by science, engulf all humanity in planned or accidental self-destruction, we dare not tempt them with weakness, for only when our arms are sufficient beyond doubt can we be certain beyond doubt that they will never be employed. But neither can two great and powerful groups of nations take comfort from our present course, both sides overburdened by the cost of modern weapons, both rightly alarmed by the steady spread of the deadly atom, yet both racing to alter that uncertain balance of terror that stays the hand of mankind's final war. So let us begin anew, remembering on both sides that civility is not a sign of weakness, and sincerity is always subject to proof. Let us never negotiate out of fear, but let us never fear to negotiate. Let both sides explore what problems unite us instead of belaboring those problems which divide us. Let both sides, for the first time, formulate serious and precise proposals for the inspection and control of arms and bring the absolute power to destroy other nations under the absolute control of all nations. Let both sides seek to invoke the wonders of science instead of its terrors. Together, let us explore the stars, conquer the deserts, eradicate disease, tap the ocean depth, and encourage the arts and commerce. Let both sides unite to heed in all corners of the earth the command of Isaiah to undo the heavy burdens and let the oppressed go free. And if a beachhead of cooperation may push back the jungle of suspicion, let both sides join in creating a new endeavor, not a new balance of power, but a new world of law where the strong are just and the weak secure and the peace preserved. All this will not be finished in the first 100 days, nor will it be finished in the first 1,000 days, nor in the life of this administration, nor even perhaps in our lifetime on this planet. But let us begin. In your hands, my fellow citizens, more than mine, will rest the final success or failure of our course. Since this country was founded, each generation of Americans has been summoned to give testimony to its national loyalty. The graves of young Americans who answered the call to service surround the globe. Now the trumpet summons us again, not as a call to bear arms, though arms we need, not as a call to battle, though in battle we are, but a call to bear the burden of a long twilight struggle, year in and year out, rejoicing in hope, patient in tribulation, a struggle against the common enemies of man, tyranny, poverty, disease, and war itself. Can we forge against these enemies a grand and global alliance, north and south, east and west, that can assure a more fruitful life for all mankind? Will you join in that historic effort? In the long history of the world, only a few generations have been granted the role of defending freedom in its hour of maximum danger. I do not shrink from this responsibility. I welcome it. I do not believe that any of us would exchange places with any other people or any other generation. The energy, the faith, the devotion which we bring to this endeavor will light our country and all who serve it. And the glow from that fire can truly light the world. And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country. My fellow citizens of the world, ask not what America will do for you, but what together we can do for the freedom of man. Finally, whether you are citizens of America or citizens of the world, ask of us here the same high standards of strength and sacrifice which we ask of you. With a good conscience, our only sure reward, with history the final judge of our deeds, let us go forth to lead the land we love, asking his blessing and his help, but knowing that here on earth, God's work must truly be our own.
One of my favorite quotes of all time: ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. Gives me chills every time I hear that. And as we've been talking about this whole time, it's election day. Go vote. I don't care who you vote for. It's not my business who you vote for. It's not your business who I vote for. Just vote. I don't tell people how to vote, but your voice is important. So thank you for listening. Thank you for supporting. Check out the Patreon. We do all kinds of extra stuff there. And until next time, for Exposed, Scandalous Files of the Elite, I'm your host, Jim Chapman. Much love.